What truly defines a royal childhood? Is it duty, tradition, or simply the warmth of family? At the Christmas carol service at Westminster Abbey, Prince Louis's handwritten message on the kindness tree offered a rare glimpse into his world. His words, a heartfelt tribute to his grandparents, Carol and Michael Middleton, spoke volumes about the values shaping his upbringing. But what does this reveal about the changing dynamics of the royal family? How has Louis's childhood differed from past generations, and what role does Queen Camilla play in it all? This touching moment holds deeper significance, shedding light on the evolving nature of the monarchy. Prince Louis has always been a source of light-heartedness within the British royal family. From the moment he stepped into the public eye, his natural playfulness and uninhibited personality set him apart. While his older siblings, Prince George and Princess Charlotte, were often seen carrying themselves with the composure expected of future senior royals, Louis was different. His expressive gestures, spontaneous dancing, and cheeky behavior during royal engagements made him a favorite among the public. His presence served as a reminder that, at the heart of the monarchy, beyond the formality and rigid expectations, was a family like any other. Over the years, Louis became known for moments that broke the traditional image of royal children. During Queen Elizabeth's Platinum Jubilee celebrations, his animated reactions became the highlight of the event, sparking laughter and endearing him to audiences worldwide. Whether it was covering his ears during the flypast or making funny faces at his mother, he was simply being a child, untouched by the weight of royal duty. Yet, beneath his playful nature was a thoughtful and affectionate child, one who shared a special bond with those closest to him, including Queen Camilla. The relationship between Louis and Camilla was not one that often made headlines, nor was it frequently documented in the way his bond with his parents and siblings was. Yet, within the walls of royal residences, away from the public eye, an unspoken warmth had developed. Queen Camilla, known for her reserved yet steady presence, had become an integral part of the royal family over time. Having married King Charles in 2005, she had slowly but surely earned her place within the monarchy, taking on public duties and supporting charitable causes. However, it was her role as a step-grandmother that often remained in the background. Many wondered what kind of relationship she would have with William and Harry's children, given the long history attached to her name. With Prince George and Princess Charlotte, the bond was respectful yet formal, perhaps because they were old enough to understand the nuances of royal traditions. But with Louis, things were different. He was young enough to see Camilla not as a historical figure but simply as Granny. Unlike the structured engagements that dictated much of royal life, their interactions were casual, built around quiet moments, reading books, playing games, and sharing stories during family gatherings. Despite the public's continued scrutiny of Camilla's role within the family, she had carved out a space for herself, defined not by titles or duty but by presence. For a child like Louis, who saw the world through the lens of curiosity rather than expectation, this meant everything. As the royal family entered 2024, challenges loomed on the horizon. With Princess Catherine stepping back from public engagements due to her health, Prince William found himself balancing his royal responsibilities with the role of a full-time father. King Charles too was facing increasing pressures, navigating both his reign and personal well-being in the midst of these changes. Ensuring stability for the younger royals became more important than ever. For William and Catherine, maintaining a sense of normalcy for their children was a priority. Their approach to parenting had always been a careful balance, honoring royal traditions while ensuring their children had a childhood that wasn't completely dictated by duty. This was particularly true for Louis, who, as the youngest, was still shielded from the heavier expectations placed on his older brother. But even as efforts were made to protect the children from the pressures unfolding behind palace doors, Louis was perceptive. He may not have understood the full extent of the challenges his family was facing, but he could sense the change, the quiet conversations between his parents, the hushed discussions between staff, and the shifts in his mother's daily presence. These were things that even a child as young as Louis could pick up on. It was during the Christmas carol service at Westminster Abbey, an event that had become an annual tradition hosted by Princess Catherine, that his emotions found a way to express themselves. The service, which focused on the themes of kindness and gratitude, held special significance that year against the backdrop of a difficult period for the royal family. It was a reminder of resilience, unity, and the strength found in small acts of love. As part of the event, a kindness tree was introduced, a place where attendees, including members of the royal family, could write personal messages of gratitude. It was a symbolic gesture meant to highlight the power of appreciation in difficult times. George and Charlotte, being older, quickly understood the significance of the activity. But for Louis, it was simple, an opportunity to put into words something that had been in his heart. In his small hands, he held a red card, carefully written in his own way. When his turn came, he walked toward the tree with quiet determination, placing his note among the others. On it, he had written, "Thank you to Granny and Grandpa because they have played games with me." It was a message that was as innocent as it was profound. In just a few words, Louis had captured the essence of what mattered most to him, not the grandeur of royal life, not the formal engagements or duties, but the simplest of moments spent with the people he loved. For those who witnessed the moment, it was touching, but for Camilla, it was deeply personal. She hadn't expected to be mentioned, nor had she anticipated such a public acknowledgement of her role in Louis's life. She had always been cautious, never wanting to impose herself in a way that might be seen as overstepping. But in that instant, none of it mattered. Louis had spoken from his heart, and that was all she needed. The weight of the moment settled in, and for a brief second, the composed Queen Camilla felt her emotions rise. It wasn't grand speeches or elaborate tributes that made a difference, it was the genuine, unfiltered love of a child. For the monarchy, where displays of affection were often measured and controlled, Louis's note was a powerful reminder that beyond the centuries-old traditions, they were first and foremost a family. As the Christmas carol service at Westminster Abbey concluded, the members of the royal family slowly made their way out of the Grand Hall, exchanging warm greetings with attendees and well-wishers. The evening had been filled with an undeniable sense of unity, an opportunity for the family to momentarily step away from the relentless scrutiny of public life and focus on what mattered most. Togetherness for Prince Louis had been a simple, joyful evening, one that allowed him to express himself in the way children do best, spontaneously and from the heart. His small note, written in his own words, had been placed among the others on the kindness tree, where messages of gratitude from guests and royal family members alike hung gently under the dim glow of the Abbey's lights. His words, thanking his granny and grandpa for playing games with him, had resonated beyond what he likely understood. They had been a rare glimpse into the genuine affection he held for his maternal grandparents, Carol and Michael Middleton, who had played a significant role in his upbringing. Unlike the grandeur of royal engagements, the Middletons had offered Prince Louis and his siblings a different kind of familial experience, one rooted in warmth, familiarity, and a life removed from the rigid expectations of royalty. From their home in Bucklebury, Berkshire, where the family often spent time away from the palace, to their involvement in everyday moments of George, Charlotte, and Louis's lives, Carol and Michael had always been a constant presence. For Princess Catherine, ensuring her children had a strong connection with her side of the family had always been important. Unlike many royal spouses who had traditionally remained within palace walls, she had made it a priority to integrate her upbringing into her children's lives. The Middletons weren't just relatives, they were an essential support system. As they left the Abbey, Prince William took a moment to glance at the messages left on the kindness tree. Many were written by children and families who had attended, each expressing gratitude for the people who had touched their lives in meaningful ways. The simplicity of Louis's note stood out to him. It was unpolished, unfiltered, and deeply personal. It was, in every way, a reflection of the childhood he and Catherine had worked so hard to give their children, one that balanced the weight of royal life with the joys of a normal upbringing. The moment may have passed quickly, but its significance lingered. While much of the attention surrounding royal events often revolved around protocol, grand speeches, and carefully orchestrated engagements, this was different. It was a child's voice, unscripted and sincere. In the days that followed, the small detail of Louis's message quietly made its way into discussions among royal observers. Unlike the dramatic headlines that often accompanied royal stories, this one carried a gentler tone. It was a reminder that beneath the centuries-old traditions, the monarchy was still built on something fundamentally human: family. The Middleton influence on William and Catherine's parenting had long been evident. Unlike past royal generations, where nannies and palace staff played a more central role in raising children, the Wales had taken a hands-on approach. Carol and Michael had been involved from the very beginning, providing the kind of stability that was often difficult to maintain within the royal institution. While Buckingham Palace remained the symbolic heart of the monarchy, Bucklebury had become the place where William and Catherine's children could experience the ordinary moments of childhood, baking in the kitchen, playing in the garden, and enjoying the quiet simplicity of being with their grandparents without the weight of titles. This wasn't the first time the depth of their connection had been visible. In previous years, George, Charlotte, and Louis had spent holidays and weekends with the Middletons, often retreating to their home for a break from royal engagements. The relationship was one built not on duty but on affection and a sense of normalcy that was difficult to find within the walls of Kensington Palace. For Louis, who was still young and largely untouched by the formal expectations placed upon his older brother, these moments were particularly meaningful. Unlike George, who was gradually preparing for his future role as king, or Charlotte, who was navigating her own place within the royal hierarchy, Louis had more freedom. His world was still defined by play, curiosity, and the people who made him feel safe. His note at the kindness tree had not been written with the intention of making headlines. It wasn't crafted for public perception or meant to be dissected by commentators. It was simply a reflection of what mattered to him. As the new year approached, the royal family quietly prepared for what lay ahead. With Princess Catherine stepping back from engagements due to her health, the focus remained on ensuring stability within the family. William, who had always been deeply protective of his wife and children, took on an even greater role in their day-to-day lives. His priority was clear: his family came first. For Queen Camilla, who had spent years adapting to her role within the monarchy, Louis's note carried a subtle reminder of the personal side of royal life. While the moment had been directed at the Middletons, it spoke to something she had come to understand deeply. Within the confines of the royal family, relationships were not always defined by titles but by the quiet moments that often went unnoticed. The monarchy had changed over the years, and the younger generation of royals, particularly William and Catherine, had redefined traditions, choosing to raise their children with a blend of royal duty and personal freedom. The balance wasn't always easy, but it was necessary. For Louis, who would eventually grow into his own place within the family, these moments of childhood, playing games with his grandparents, writing small notes of appreciation, and experiencing love in its purest form, would shape the way he saw the world. While he may not have fully understood the impact of his words that evening at Westminster Abbey, one thing was certain: in a family so often defined by history, it was the quiet, personal moments that truly mattered. As the festive season came to an end, the focus within the royal family shifted back to their daily responsibilities. The transition from the warmth of family gatherings to the structured demands of royal life was always an adjustment, especially for Prince William and Princess Catherine, who had spent years carefully balancing their public role with their private life as parents. For Prince Louis, the return to routine meant going back to Lamrook School, where he and his siblings, Prince George and Princess Charlotte, had been enrolled since September 2022. The school, known for its emphasis on both academics and outdoor activities, had provided a sense of stability for the young royals. Unlike past generations, where royal children were educated within palace walls or attended separate institutions, William and Catherine had made a conscious effort to ensure their children had a more traditional schooling experience, one that allowed them to grow in an environment where they could form friendships beyond the royal circle. At Lamrook, Louis was known for his energetic personality. He was naturally playful, much like how the public had seen him during royal engagements, but he was also described as bright and inquisitive, always eager to explore new things. The school's setting, surrounded by vast green spaces, gave him plenty of opportunities to embrace his love for outdoor activities, something that had always been encouraged by his parents. Meanwhile, within the royal household, the new year brought continued adjustments. With Princess Catherine focusing on her health, Prince William had taken on additional responsibilities, not just within the royal family but also in managing the daily lives of their 3 children. While George, as the eldest, had already begun to understand the gravity of his future role, Louis was still shielded from those expectations. He remained in a stage of childhood where the biggest concerns revolved around school, playtime, and family traditions. One of those traditions had always been the time spent with his maternal grandparents, Carol and Michael Middleton. Over the years, the Middletons had been a steady presence in the lives of William and Catherine's children. Their home in Bucklebury, Berkshire, had served as a retreat from palace life, a place where George, Charlotte, and Louis could experience a different kind of upbringing, one that mirrored Catherine's own childhood. The relationship between Louis and his grandparents had always been one of warmth and familiarity. Unlike the structured nature of royal engagements, time spent at the Middletons' home was casual. There were no formalities, just family meals, outdoor games, and a sense of normalcy that was sometimes difficult to achieve within the royal estate. For Carol and Michael, their role in their grandchildren's lives was something they valued deeply. They had been present from the very beginning, offering support when William and Catherine needed it and ensuring that their home was a space where the children could simply be themselves. It was no surprise, then, that Louis had chosen to express his appreciation for them during the Christmas carol service at Westminster Abbey. The small note he had written for the kindness tree, thanking his granny and grandpa for playing games with him, was a reflection of the affection he had for them. While it was a brief moment during the service, it resonated with those who understood the importance of family within the royal circle. It also served as a subtle reminder of the changing dynamics within the monarchy, where personal relationships were beginning to take precedence over strict adherence to tradition. Meanwhile, Queen Camilla had taken notice of the moment as well. Though the message had been directed at Carol and Michael Middleton, it reinforced something she had quietly understood for years. Within the royal family, the bonds that truly mattered were not dictated by titles but by time spent together. Camilla had been navigating her own role as a step-grandmother for nearly 2 decades. Her relationship with William and Harry's children had always been one of quiet support rather than an attempt to fill a role that was not hers to claim. She had never expected to take the place of Princess Diana in their lives, nor had she ever tried. Instead, she had been present in the way she knew best, through small gestures, through patience, and through allowing relationships to develop naturally rather than forcing them. For Louis, who was still young enough to see the world without the constraints of royal expectations, family was defined by those who made him feel safe and loved. His bond with the Middletons was strong because they had been a constant presence, just as his bond with his parents and siblings had shaped his early years. As the weeks passed, life within the royal household continued at its usual pace. While public engagements resumed for senior members of the royal family, William and Catherine remained focused on maintaining a sense of normalcy for their children. For Louis, that meant returning to school, spending time outdoors, and continuing the small traditions that made his childhood feel stable. Whether it was playing in the gardens at Adelaide Cottage, where the Wales family had relocated in 2022, or visiting his grandparents in Bucklebury, his world remained one built on the simple joys of childhood. The quiet impact of his Christmas message lingered in the background, a reminder that even within one of the most scrutinized families in the world, the love between a grandchild and their grandparents was something that transcended the complexities of royal life. As life settled back into its usual rhythm, the royal family continued to navigate the delicate balance between duty and personal life. Prince William, now more involved than ever in managing his children's day-to-day routines, made sure that Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis felt a sense of stability despite the changes within the household. The transition had been subtle but necessary, with Princess Catherine taking a step back from public engagements due to her health. Adjustments had been made to ensure that their children's lives remained as unaffected as possible. For Prince Louis, the beginning of the new year was much like any other. School resumed, weekend visits with family continued, and his world remained centered around the things that made him happiest, spending time outdoors, playing with his siblings, and the familiar presence of his grandparents, Carol and Michael Middleton. But while things remained unchanged for Louis, the royal family as a whole was undergoing a period of reflection. The past year had brought challenges that extended beyond personal struggles. The evolving role of the monarchy, the pressures of public scrutiny, and the adjustments required within the family had all shaped the way William and Catherine approached parenting. They had always been intentional about shielding their children from unnecessary media attention. Unlike previous royal generations, where young members of the family were often thrust into the public eye early on, William and Catherine had maintained firm boundaries, allowing George, Charlotte, and Louis to experience childhood with as much normalcy as possible. This approach was particularly evident in their decision regarding education. Lamrook School, where the 3 children were currently enrolled, had been chosen for its balance of academic rigor and emphasis on outdoor learning. The school provided them with the space to grow in an environment that was not solely defined by royal expectations. For Louis, who was still young and full of energy, this meant he could explore, make friends, and develop his personality without the immediate pressures that would inevitably come later in life. Beyond school, the strong presence of the Middleton family continued to play a crucial role. For William and Catherine, the Middletons were more than just extended family, they were a pillar of support. Carol and Michael Middleton had been actively involved in their grandchildren's upbringing from the very beginning, ensuring that George, Charlotte, and Louis had experiences that extended beyond palace walls. Their influence was particularly important for Louis, who, as the youngest, still had the freedom to enjoy a childhood that was largely untouched by the weight of future responsibilities. While George had already begun to understand his role as the future king and Charlotte was naturally finding her place within the royal hierarchy, Louis remained in a space where his identity was shaped more by his surroundings than by his lineage. The warmth of the Middleton household, located in Bucklebury, Berkshire, provided a familiar contrast to the structured nature of royal life. Unlike official engagements, where every move was carefully observed, time spent with his grandparents allowed him to experience the simplicity of everyday moments, helping in the kitchen, playing in the garden, or listening to stories before bedtime. This close relationship had been evident during the Christmas Carol service at Westminster Abbey, where Louis had chosen to leave a message for his grandparents on the kindness tree. His words, thanking them for playing games with him, had been a small but meaningful insight into the role they played in his life. The note had quietly reinforced something central to William and Catherine's parenting philosophy, the belief that childhood should be shaped by love, not duty. It was a sentiment that Queen Camilla had taken notice of as well. While the message had been directed at Carol and Michael, it had reminded her of the importance of personal relationships within the royal family. For Camilla, the role of a step-grandmother was one she had approached with quiet respect. She had never sought to replace Princess Diana in the lives of William and Harry and had understood from the start that their children would form their own perspectives on her over time. Instead, she had chosen to remain present in a way that was natural, offering support when needed but never imposing. Her relationship with the younger generation of royals had developed gradually. Unlike King Charles, whose role within the family was largely defined by his position as monarch, Camilla had been able to foster a more personal connection. She had spoken in the past about how much she enjoyed spending time with her grandchildren, both biological and step-grandchildren, emphasizing that, in the end, family was about presence rather than titles. Though Louis's note had been a simple expression of gratitude, it had, in its own way, reflected the way personal bonds had shaped his upbringing. In a family often viewed through the lens of historical narratives and royal duties, it was a reminder that, at the heart of it all, the connections that mattered most were the ones built in private moments. As William continued to take on more responsibilities within the royal family, his focus remained clear, ensuring that his children had a foundation rooted in love, family, and a sense of identity that was not solely tied to their royal status. Catherine's influence, even as she stepped away from public duties, was evident in the way their children were being raised. The balance they had created with the support of the Middletons had given George, Charlotte, and Louis a childhood that was both grounded and full of warmth. For Louis, this meant that his world remained one where the simple joys of being a child were still protected. Whether it was running through the gardens of Adelaide Cottage, attending school with his siblings, or spending weekends in Bucklebury, his childhood was shaped not just by royal traditions but by the people who loved him most. In the years to come, as he grew into his own role within the royal family, these moments, playing games with his grandparents, leaving small notes of appreciation, and experiencing love in its purest form, would remain at the core of who he was. As the months went by, the royal family continued to focus on their commitments, both within the public sphere and behind palace walls. Prince William remained dedicated to balancing his increasing responsibilities while ensuring that his children's daily lives remained as normal as possible. The transition had been gradual but necessary, especially with Princess Catherine stepping back from public duties to focus on her health. For Prince Louis, life remained filled with the familiar rhythms of school, time outdoors, and weekends spent with family. The presence of Carol and Michael Middleton continued to be an important aspect of his routine, offering the same warmth and support they had always provided. While the royal schedule could often be demanding, William and Catherine had made sure that their children's connection to the Middletons remained strong. Time spent at Bucklebury, Berkshire, was often a welcome contrast to the structured life within royal estates. There, Louis and his siblings could experience the joys of childhood without the watchful eyes of the public or the formal expectations that came with their royal titles. It was a place where they could bake with their grandmother, play in the fields, and enjoy the simplicity of being around family. The Christmas carol service at Westminster Abbey had been a small but meaningful moment for Louis, and its impact had lingered in the background. His handwritten note for the kindness tree, thanking his grandparents for playing games with him, had not only given a glimpse into the affection he had for Carol and Michael but had also underscored the values that William and Catherine had instilled in their children. The royal family, despite its deep-rooted traditions, had evolved significantly over the years. The approach to parenting that William and Catherine had adopted was noticeably different from that of previous generations. While duty remained central to their roles, they had placed an equal emphasis on ensuring their children had a sense of identity outside of their royal status. For Louis, this meant he had the freedom to develop his own personality without the immediate pressures that his older brother, Prince George, was beginning to experience. As the heir to the throne, George had already started to understand the responsibilities that would one day fall upon him, while Charlotte was naturally finding her own role within the family. But for Louis, who was still young, life remained centered around learning, playing, and simply growing up in a loving environment. Meanwhile, within the wider royal family, Queen Camilla continued to support King Charles in his role. Though her presence in public engagements was often defined by duty, she had, over time, built quiet but meaningful relationships within the family. While her bond with William and Harry's children had not been as publicly discussed as her other royal responsibilities, she had remained a steady figure in the background. The moment at Westminster Abbey had reinforced something that Camilla had understood for a long time, that relationships within the royal family were built not on obligation but on shared experiences. The simplicity of a grandchild expressing gratitude, the act of leaving a note for the people who mattered, was a reminder of what truly shaped the strength of a family. As the year progressed, William and Catherine continued to maintain a careful balance between public life and personal commitments. Their decision to move to Adelaide Cottage in 2022 had been driven by a desire to offer their children more privacy and a space where they could grow up with a sense of freedom. The cottage, located on the Windsor estate, had given them a home that was close enough to their royal duties but far enough to provide a more relaxed environment. Louis, like his siblings, had settled into this lifestyle with ease. The garden surrounding the estate provided endless opportunities for him to explore, and his natural curiosity meant that he was always eager to learn something new. Whether it was through his interactions at school, his time spent outdoors, or the moments shared with his family, every experience was shaping his understanding of the world. Despite the challenges the royal family had faced over the past year, their ability to focus on what mattered most, family, stability, and tradition, had remained unchanged. The way Louis had expressed his appreciation for his grandparents at the Christmas service was a reflection of this. It wasn't a grand statement or a carefully planned gesture, it was simply a child's way of recognizing the people who had been present in his life. The quiet impact of that moment was not lost on those who followed the royal family closely. It was a small but powerful reminder that beyond the historical weight of the monarchy, the real foundation of the royal family was built on the relationships that existed away from the public eye. For Louis, the years ahead would bring new experiences, new lessons, and eventually, a clearer understanding of his role within the monarchy. But for now, he remained in the space that his parents had worked so hard to protect, a childhood filled with warmth, security, and the knowledge that he was deeply loved. In time, as he looked back on these moments, whether it was leaving a simple note on the kindness tree, playing games with his grandparents, or growing up surrounded by the quiet support of his family, he would know that these were the memories that had shaped him the most. With that, we have reached the end of today's video. If you have come this far with us, be sure to check out other videos on the channel.